And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis, and as always, next to me is my beautiful co-host Laraib, as we are here on the First and Goal podcast, about to break down all of the Week 4 NFL action. We are filming this on Tuesday after all 16 games have happened from last week, and a lot to get into, Laraib. So, you want to go ahead and say anything before we hop right in?
Yeah, I want to say thank you to the viewers, Lewis. 3 out of our last 4 videos, Lewis, have had over 40 views. One of them almost at 50. So thank you so much to all you guys watching our videos. You know, it's been a long 4 years for us. A lot of ups and downs in the views, as if you could say that. But thank you guys for sticking around with us. Just enjoying football with us, Lewis. But without further ado, let's get into the picks again for this week, Lewis. And once again, I'm on a 3-game burner. Now, this could have been really bad with the Denver Broncos, Lewis, as my lock. Now, they will not be as my lock for the rest of the season for anything, Lewis. But they get it done and they come back in Chicago, and I beat you by 1 point. You got to stop picking against my Texans, Lewis. I mean, they're also on a heater.
I'm 0-4 picking Texans games this year. I picked them the first 2 weeks. I pick against them the next 2. I'm done.
Yeah, but that was the difference. No Deshaun Watson in that Cleveland game, and so you got that with the Baltimore Ravens. And Buffalo comes out with a masterclass at home against your Dolphins. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But boom, 3 games in a row for me, but still a long season ahead of us, Lewis. I'm not going to be showboating too much because I know how this thing goes.
You know what? I'm feeling sharp, Laraib. I feel like I'm going in the right direction. You just had some balls bounce your way. Thanks a lot, Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams, you deserve him at this point. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things didn't go my way. Dallas, that was a good pick by me. I know you had to pick an upset. So, but yeah, I mean, Houston, I'm done. I'm going to figure them out. I got you now. All right, Laraib, well, let's go ahead and start getting into some of the biggest headlines from this week. And let's start with those Buffalo Bills as they dominate the Miami Dolphins 48-20, almost similar to what the Dolphins did to the Broncos the week before. So, I mean, shoot, how much better are the Bills than the Broncos? Well, unless it's a rock, paper, scissors, where the Broncos are going to dominate the Bills. I doubt that. But, so they have won their last 3 games by a margin of 30 points a game, and they are looking elite so far this season outside of their first game. I ask you, Laraib, as of now, should the Bills be the favorites in the AFC?
Well, Lewis, early on into the season, you never want to say this or that, Lewis, but I have to say yes to that statement. Now, we know this Bills team is very talented, Lewis. They've had the pieces for the last couple of years, and all it's really come down to has been execution, right? Every single year, they always have this or that play that does not go that way. They have these costly penalties, missed plays that, prevent them from going to the Super Bowl. But the reason why I'm picking them as the best team in the AFC isn't necessarily what they've been doing this season. It's what I've been seeing out of everybody else, Lewis. Now, we know the Chiefs, 2-time Super Bowl winner Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. In my personal opinion, Lewis, their offense has just not been clicking this season as we've seen it so far. Against the Bears, they dominate them with 40 points. But besides that, I haven't really seen Patrick Mahomes in his classic fashion with those nice deep bombs down the field. They're lacking on the receiver side, in my opinion, besides Travis Kelce. And we saw Patrick Mahomes, we know he's the best quarterback in football, hands down. I don't think that's a debate at all. But we've seen him have these weird sidearm throws, Lewis. Now, he had two plays against the Jets that resulted in interceptions. We saw against the Lions, necessarily wasn't his fault, but then going back to the wide receivers where the balls are just bouncing off these guys' hands and resulting in interceptions for him. And I just don't think this Chiefs team is, just who they were offensively in the years past. Now, besides that, you talk about the Browns, Deshaun Watson dealing with the injury, and their defense kind of got exposed this last week. And the Ravens on the other side, Lewis, we know their offense with Lamar Jackson can be really dynamic, but they're also lacking weapons on the receiver side of the ball. And so you look at the best roster overall, the team that I think has the best chance this year in the AFC, Lewis, I have to stick with the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with you right now based off how they played these last 3 games. But, I mean, I'm still going with the Chiefs. And you brought up some interesting points. You said Patrick Mahomes, he looked sloppy, but, they got a win at the Jets. And I'm like, all right, yeah, they got the win. He looked sloppy. Well, what did Josh Allen do at the Jets? Let's bring it back to week 1, where he looked 10 times worse than Mahomes last night, and they lost. So credit to the Jets there, credit to the home stadium. But let's not act like week 1 didn't happen, Laraib. So if we're basing,
That
if
was
you're
a
saying,
long time ago.
oh, right. All right. So they're basing the vibe off the season. I'm just saying the Bills have not exactly played a gauntlet of a schedule. They dominated the Dolphins, and I give them all the credit. Everyone was singing the Dolphins' praises, having them in the top of their power rankings. And I even picked them to win that game. I was drinking the Kool-Aid, Laraib. But, this Bills team, what I'll say is very impressive is that front four can get so much pressure. You bring over Leonard Floyd from the Rams, and he looks electric. You still have Ed, what's his name?
Ed Oliver, Houston
Ed
alum.
Oliver, Houston alum, go Cougs in the middle. And they just have a ferocious
Our
pass
guy,
rush.
Matt Milano. Don't forget to mention him.
Shout out. And that's not even mentioning Von Miller, who's he was put on the PUP, didn't play in the first 4 games. Doesn't seem like he's going to play anytime soon. That could be a good thing because he is a playoff player. He makes the biggest plays in the biggest games. So having him back later on in the season, we can kind of preserve his health instead of losing him early in the season. That could be a huge plus for this team. My biggest concern still lies within the roller coaster that is Josh Allen. And his biggest games, he's had the worst performances. We talked about last year against the Bengals, just looked off. We talked about week 1 where people were legitimately questioning, well, I know it's week 1, but we've seen these games out of Josh Allen. He's looked amazing since then. You have to give him credit for that. But the turnovers are just like they stockpile with him. It's never just one interception, plays a clean game. It's he plays a clean game, and then he has an absolute tragic Johnson game. So it's just unreliability. And what I do appreciate is it seems like they've tried to find something within the running game. But even against the Dolphins last week, they weren't running the ball that much. They just got a super huge lead, and they were able to bully the Dolphins team. You need to be able to establish that run game. Take less off Josh Allen. And if you start doing that now, maybe he plays smarter going forward. He doesn't always have to go for the kill shot. We talked about that week 1. They've been going for the kill shot ever since, but they've just been playing, worse opponents, worse secondaries, and able to feast on them. But against the better defenses later on in the season, that's going to prove to be an issue. And I'll say this Chiefs defense has looked very impressive so far this season. They had a few hiccups against Zach Wilson last week, but, so far they shut down Trevor Lawrence at Jacksonville. They only allowed 2 touchdowns against the Lions in week 1, and they dominated the Bears, but that's the Bears. So, I've been very impressed. Trent McDuffie and the secondaries looked really good. You get back Chris Jones on that defensive line. They're getting a ton of pressure. And then they have guys who can just fly around the field. They didn't have Nick Bolton, probably their best linebacker, and against the Jets. And you could tell sometimes in the running game that they were losing that punch. He comes back. They're a different defense. That's why I just think the Chiefs are a lot more of a complete team with a head coach and a quarterback that I trust infinitely more than anyone else in the NFL.
Good takes, Lewis, but I still have to ride with this Bills team. I disagree with you. I think this Bills team has a better roster. They have better receivers. And I will give it to you. You can trust Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid more than you can Josh Allen and Sean McDermott. But we'll see what this Chiefs team does to kind of pick up some of that slack, like you mentioned, on the receiver position. Because like you said, they only score 17 against Jacksonville. Of course, they dominated against the Bears, and then kind of a little bit of a stinker, in my opinion, against the Jets, who will have a great defense, Lewis. But I still think the Bills, top to bottom, have the best team overall in the AFC. And I think, so far in the season, we can kind of maybe say that these 2 teams could be in the AFC Championship this year, Lewis. We'll see how the Ravens can pick up on some of that slack, Lewis. But let's go ahead and move on to the NFC side of the ball, Lewis. And specifically, let's move on to the NFC East. Now, we know there's 2 teams in there, Lewis, that we both can feel are top of the division in the NFC. Also right up there with the 49ers, the Cowboys, and the Eagles, Lewis. So out of those 2, which one do you think is the better team in that division?
You might hate me for this answer, Laraib, and it's going to be the unpopular answer. But I think the Dallas Cowboys are the best team in the NFC East. And I know they had the absolute clunker against Arizona in week 3, and we killed them for it. We said the red zone problems. We mentioned everything. Kellen Moore, no Dalton Schultz, no Ezekiel Elliott. But the power or I don't know, how dynamic this team is so understated. Their defense at all 3 levels has absolute playmakers who can just wreck a game. You lose Diggs for the season. It obviously sucks. That's a huge miss. But Deron Bland with the pick 6 has filled in very nicely in that role as a secondary corner. You lose a little bit of, nickel play from him because he was really good as a nickel, a third guy. But when you have Stephon Gilmore on the outside, who's been playing pretty well this season, I know I gave him a lot of grief because he didn't have that great of a game in the opener against the Giants, but he still has the ability. He's super smart, and he can just blanket guys. So I think with him on one side, Deron Bland, who's a super instinctual, just feisty player, their secondary is strong. It's still one of the best units in the league, even when they're missing their best player. And then on the interior, I mean, just a, absolute just cycle of defensive studs. Dorrance Armstrong, DeMarcus Lawrence, and of course, as you said, the best defensive player in football, Micah Parsons. So, I mean, I know you're not going to backtrack on that statement, so we still believe that. And their offense, we see when they have their full offensive line ready and playing, that this is an effective, efficient offense. Now, they still have the red zone problems. They had the red zone problems last game against the Patriots, but their ability just to move the ball, get down the field, they have so many different options. CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks had a few big catches in that game, Tony Pollard, and I like the backup running backs too. Rico Dowdle had a few big catches and big runs. Deuce Vaughn gives you a little bit of juice in the third string. And, I just like Jake Ferguson is starting to emerge, rookie tight end. He had a big game last game against the Patriots. They just have so many ways they can attack you. And their defense, the way it gets turnovers, the way it can attack an opposing offense, just puts so much pressure on the other opposing offense to keep up because the Cowboys are going to put up points. And I just really like this team. They destroyed the Patriots last game. And I know you'll probably go the Eagles here, but my pick, personally, the Cowboys.
I am going with the Eagles, Lewis. Now, everything you said about this Cowboys offense is way better on the Eagles side of the on their offense. Lewis, offensive line is better. I like AJ Brown, Devonta Smith over CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks. I like DeAndre Swift and the trio of running backs up over there better than Tony Pollard and Dowdle and 5'2" Deuce Vaughn, Lewis.
Solid.
And the big thing is the health of the offensive line, Lewis. Now, we already know this Eagles offensive line is way better than the Cowboys, and also they stay healthy, Lewis. We talk about this Cowboys team. They're always rotating guys on the left side of the line. Zach Martin's always going out. They have the other guy, last name starts with a T or something. He's always coming in and out of the lineup, Lewis. And so just talk about the health of the offensive line. And of course, you talk about this Cowboys team, Lewis, who's always front running, who's always showboating, who's always America's team, Lewis. But it's the Eagles who I trust more with head coach Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, Lewis, who've been to an NFC Championship, Lewis, who've been to a Super Bowl, Lewis. Meanwhile, you have Mike McCarthy over there with Dak Prescott, who loves those interceptions, Lewis, loves to, I'm going to shorten down on those interceptions this year and then loses to the Cardinals after throwing a terrible red zone interception, Lewis.
One interception all season for Dak Prescott. Go on.
He just loves to throw those interceptions, Lewis. And we'll see whenever they start playing real teams, we'll see when the real Dak Prescott comes out. Because this Patriots team that they played against this week, Lewis, looks like they've completely given up. Now, we know the Patriots gave the Eagles a little bit of a headache week 1. But now Cowboys at home, Mac Jones just, oh, man, that was just awful game from him. And we'll see what the situation – they might be in the Caleb Williams Bowl over there in New England, Lewis. But coming back to this Cowboys team.
Scary.
Yeah, see the defenses. It's hard to say because, like you said, we both agree, Micah Parsons is the best defensive player in the NFL is
by far the best player between both teams. You have to admit that.
Yes, for sure. But Jalen
offense
Carter,
and defense, he is the best player between both teams.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, go on.
But head coach, tell me, head coach.
Okay. Get back to your point.
Offensive line,
Cowboys.
home field presence. I just think this Eagles team is all around way better than this Cowboys team. The defensive edge, of course, will go to the Cowboys, but when it comes late in the season, Lewis, and you have that pedigree of the Eagles where they've won a Super Bowl, Lewis, and they went last year, I think I can trust them a lot more going forward in the season. Talk about still being undefeated. And they got a little bit of Now, also had a little bit of a headache with the Commanders, but that's a team who also ruined their perfect season last year, Lewis. So we know these two teams are going to be divisional battle going at it all season long. But I'm going to stick with the Eagles, Lewis.
What worries me about the Eagles is the back half of that defense. They have not played up to par. Darius Slay looks a step slower. James Bradbury's been in and out of the lineup with injury, and those linebackers cannot cover worth their lives on the back end. So, and then you lose a bunch of, your starting safeties and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Marcus Epps to free agency. So you have a completely changed secondary. And so far it's been getting eaten alive by opposing offenses. Now they're 4-0, but it's not been a pretty 4-0. Jalen Hurts looks like he's regressed a little as a passer. Now he still has the explosive plays. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, you can't deny their talent. But it just seems like he's a little more uncomfortable in the pocket. Losing Shane Steichen as an offensive coordinator, we've seen what he's been doing with Indianapolis. They look like a well-run offense, and you just juxtapose that with kind of how shaky this team has looked. What worries me about the Eagles going forward is just this offensive line is so old. They're still very good. Like you mentioned, I'll probably give the Eagles the edge of offensive line between these two teams, but Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, just these older guys. Mailata is still in his prime, but he's not that strong. That right side of the offensive line, Cam Jurgens as well, is just, how much can we trust them going forward? A lot of stuff they've been dealing with. Lane Johnson missed time last year with a hamstring. So we'll see how sustainable this heavy running, power running game is going to be throughout a 17-game season going into the playoffs when you're going up against a gauntlet of great defenses. And this Eagles schedule, Laraib, is brutal. There's a 6-game stretch where they play the Cowboys, the Bills, the Chiefs, the 49ers, and the Cowboys. That's 5 games. And then they play the Seahawks the week after. That is a gauntlet right there, Laraib. You're probably playing the best teams in the NFL. Maybe not the Seahawks, but we'll get into it. But that stretch will determine how legit this Eagles team is going to be, especially with health going forward. Jalen Hurts has missed time here and there. But the real test, and what I'll tell you, is I'm saying the Cowboys now because I'm putting a little bit of money in the bank, as you can say, because next week, Sunday Night Football, they play the 49ers. The best team in football, we can both agree right now, is the 49ers. If they go into San Francisco and beat the 49ers, I suspect you'll be singing a different tune.
And when they don't, Lewis, and they lose to the 49ers for, the 4th time in a row, Lewis, what are you going to be saying after that? Now, I agree with you. This division is going to be a lot more competitive for that first spot this year than it was last year. Like you mentioned, this Cowboys defense all across the board. Dan Quinn just has those guys running, flying across the field. And so we'll see how this NFC East division turns out, Lewis. But let's go ahead and move on to Monday Night Football. I was fired up for this one, Lewis. My Seahawks go back to MetLife, where they've been just dominant, Lewis. Of course, won Super Bowl 48 over there in an outstanding fashion. It was defense that really carried us in that one. It was our defense which really carried us in this one, Lewis. Now, my guy, Devin Witherspoon.
Our guy. I love me some Devin Witherspoon.
Yeah, this Seahawks cornerback duo, Lewis, has been outstanding. I said last week in our review that Devon Witherspoon was one of the most targeted cornerbacks so far in his young NFL career, and just the amount of tackles he had against the Panthers. And so the Giants, tried to replicate some of that same success, and he dominated them, Lewis. Talk about how many, over 6 tackles, 2 sacks, an interception for a touchdown.
Yep.
He was flying all over the field, Lewis. Congrats to him for his first NFL interception. That's going to be the first of many, Lewis. But still, for this game, just amazing performance from the Seahawks. Of course, Geno Smith gets banged up a little bit, but he still goes out there like a competitor he is and dominates in this one, Lewis. Why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about this Giants team, Lewis?
Well, before I get into the Giants side of it, which I'm excited to, one quick thing is we see Jamal Adams. He's back. for about
Mm.
6 plays there, and then gets a knee to the head from Daniel Jones. But hey, I mean, he had a pressure. He looked decent in coverage. He wasn't getting attacked. So that's something to look forward to as well. I mean, it's a concussion. He'll probably be out another week, but he'll be there this season. Another just piece for this defense. And they were missing 3 starting corners last night too, Laraib. Now I'm not going to blow too much smoke up the Seahawks secondary after seeing what Andy Dalton did to them and seeing what Jared Goff did to them, and especially seeing what Matthew Stafford did to them. It seems like maybe the aberration is Daniel Jones and the New York Giants, who, I mean, golly. Now, a lot of people are kind of confused on where are we placing the blame. Is it the coaching staff and not preparing offensively? And defensively, they're pretty trash too. But offensively, is it the coaching staff not getting them prepared to play a game where you're missing some offensive linemen? Is it the offensive linemen themselves for just being garbage? Is it Daniel Jones for missing throws, looking tentative in the pocket? It's a combination. And that's what you get with the Daniel Jones offensive experience. Last year, we see him with a perfect system. And it wasn't perfect. You could have asked for better receivers on the outside, but great running game, well coached, a good offensive line. And it's about a 9-win team, could win you a playoff game, maybe one. That is probably your ceiling if you're the Giants offensively. If you're missing offensive linemen, see, Daniel Jones is a buoy, right? He is as good as his surrounding parts. If they're very good, he's up to the top. If he's very bad, he's down there with them. He doesn't elevate. What I've seen CJ Stroud do through 4 weeks with similar offensive line problems, he elevates. He brings those guys forward. Jay Herbo brings those guys forward. I'll give him his flowers. Patrick Mahomes, not great wide receivers, missing offensive linemen, elevates. And I have not seen that. Now, did he play awful last night? I'm going to give him a bit of a pass because that offensive line was garbage. Evan Neal, the right tackle, looking like a lost puppy out there. How many times did a corner or a safety get pressure on Daniel Jones last night? That's inexcusable. That's on the offensive line coach. That's on the offensive coordinator. That's on Daniel Jones not setting protection. And that's on the tackles for just being lazy. I mean, I saw a play where Daniel Jones, Micah Parsons tweeted this out, and he said, oh, it's Daniel Jones' fault. And you just see the offensive line crumble immediately. All 5 of them in space looking like they're blocking, ghost out there because the defenders are in Daniel Jones' face. But it's just a problem with Daniel Jones. It just seems like he doesn't process things enough. He doesn't take a lot of big risks after having all those turnovers his first few years in the league. And then you see, the play where Brian Dable just flips his tablet when he's disgusted. Darren Waller is wide open in the corner of the end zone, and you throw a pick six. Like that's the Daniel Jones experience. And now Giants fans are sitting here like, oh crap, what did we sign ourselves up for 3 years with this extension? There were all the red flags going into the year. And I was buying into all the red flags until the very end where I was like, I don't know. Now I feel like an idiot. The Giants are fraudulent. Getting Andrew Thomas back will be huge for them. Getting Saquon back will be huge. These are undoubtedly 2 of their best 3 offensive pieces. But I'm just questioning the ceiling of a Daniel Jones offense. I don't think it's good long term.
You have to go through, Lewis. You even have to question the floor a little bit. How many games can this team win? You talk about bringing in Brian Dable and just an amazing year he had last year, but now it's all been crumbling down over there in New York, Lewis, and I really don't know what the solution to this is because you talk about offensive line depth. That's every single team is trying to find that depth, that offensive line position. So it's not like there's going to be some magic guy that you're going to just find and bring in that's going to solve all your issues. And the thing is,
teams can scheme it up. Teams can find out ways. And it seemed like the Giants last night just let Daniel Jones to the wolves.
Yeah, Lewis, there's obviously some play design that, you can have guards pulling here and there. You're going to bring in extra tight ends for some more help. But it looks like they kind of just were lost out there, like you said. And so we'll see what the long-term thing is over there in New York because Brian Dable did not look happy. I think he'd much rather be over there in Buffalo once again with his boy Josh Allen. Buffalo. But Lewis, let's go ahead and talk a little bit of long-term for my Seahawks. Now, I think you see me ecstatic over here, Lewis, so jolly about my Seahawks. But we've been banged the hell up, Lewis. Our offensive line, guys, for the last 2-3 weeks going in and out. Geno Smith hurt his knee in this one. And this season, Lewis, could not get any more difficult for my Seahawks. Because let
Oh
me tell
yeah.
you some of the teams that we're going to play. The Browns, the Ravens. We still have to play the 49ers twice. We still have to play the Cowboys, Lewis. We have to play the Eagles. And so this is
Y'all
going to
have a
be
bye week next week?
yes. So the one saving grace kind of is our bye week.
I don't know. An early bye week is
exactly,
tough.
Lewis. And an early bye week, when you have an 18-week long season and you have a bye week and week 5 in October, it's kind of difficult when you get to the latter half, Lewis. But I think this couldn't have come at a better time because, like I mentioned, with all those injuries, if we can start to get some guys healthy and come back against the Cincinnati Bengals in a couple of weeks, Lewis, we might have a shot. But like you mentioned, we've been playing absolute pumpkins at the quarterback position, and still they've been dicing up our secondary. Now, Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon can't cover the entire field, Lewis. Jamal Adams, he's not really the best guy in coverage. Julian Love from the Giants also isn't the greatest guy. We know those guys like to play in the box, Lewis. Now, this 11 sack performance is amazing to see when we're playing an offensive line against the Giants. When we go later on to the season, we have to play a team like the Eagles. We're going to play a team like the Cowboys, the 49ers with all their run schemes. It's going to get only more difficult from here, Lewis. So I know we're flying high right now, but I have a feeling that things might come back down to earth later on in the season.
There is a 4-game stretch. Home for the 49ers, at the Cowboys, at the 49ers, home for the Eagles. That is the do or die part of your season right there, Laraib. But so far, through 4 weeks, that first game, it's starting to feel like that was a bit of an aberration. Seemed like y'all didn't take the game too seriously, and the game just kind of snowballed out of hand. So far, this offense has looked good. The defense has been improving week by week. And let's see if maybe we can, going into this bye week, early bye weeks are never really that good in my experience. But if you're a team like the Seahawks, you can take advantage of this, and then we'll see what happens going forward the rest of the schedule. But I would be optimistic if I were you. Now, let's flip the page to a little bit more pessimism. New Orleans Saints fall at home 26-9. First game they've allowed more than 20 points since last December. And in those 12 straight games where they've allowed 20 or fewer points, the Saints record is 6-6. That is awful for your offense. I mean, just speaking on it, let's speak on the game yesterday. It was a clear, Derek Carr miraculously is like, oh my gosh, he's going to play. He had the shoulder injury that took him out of the Packers game. He was playing well in the Packers game. And then it's like, oh my gosh, the offense just faltered without him. So theoretically, you get him back. We start to pick things up again. And it was bad. I thought he had good protection last week. I thought the offensive line did a good job. He was holding onto the ball for way too long. I don't know if it was a thing where he could trust his shoulder. I don't know if it's a play calling thing. A lot of Saints fans are pointing fingers at Pete Carmichael, rightfully so, because in 21 straight games, we have not scored over 28 points offensively. That is not good. I mean, that's clear, Sean Payton being gone, Drew Brees being gone. It's like, oh, Pete Carmichael's obviously the guy you rise up. Well, how much was he leaning on these future Hall of Famers? Like, how long is this leash that we're going to give this guy for loyalty? And he's given us a lot of great moments in that building. Don't get me wrong. But at some point, it just seems like he does not have the confidence to be the lead play caller for this team. Now, I was joking around earlier. Hey, let's bring up John Gruden. He's had success with Derek Carr. He's a little bit of a fire starter, some might say. But once you win a few games, you'll get over it. Ask the Cleveland Browns. But I don't know. And the defense was just missing assignments, missing tackles. Baker Mayfield looked elite against the Saints, and I'll give him that. I'll give you a little bit of a pat on the back for that one. Baker looked pretty good. Drink that Kool-Aid. Only one hand on it, no two hands. But I'll give the Buccaneers credit. They surprised me with how well their offense executed, but it was just the mishaps that really put the Saints in a hole. At the end of the first half, you get the ball back with like 40 seconds left, and you're in your own, 2-yard line. So you're like, let's play it safe. You give the ball to Adam Prentice, which so far this season, the only thing of note he's done is drop a pass on the third down, like 2 series before this, and he immediately fumbles. Buccaneers now have the ball within the 5-yard line, and they score a touchdown. It's 14-3 going into the half. The way our offense is playing, game's over. Game's over at this point. The red zone problems are an issue. Alvin Kamara being back definitely looked good, but maybe Derek Carr was a little too reliant on Alvin Kamara. 13 catches for 33 yards is disgusting. That is a gross stat line. Long term or short term, what are the fixes for this Saints team? You need to be able to run the ball more. You need a balanced offense. And where is Derek Carr physically? Was that game because he pushed himself, tried being a hero? He wasn't 100%. If that's the case, that's malpractice from the Saints coaching staff and saying, you're not, they should have been able to monitor him throughout the week and say, you're not ready to go. Let Jameis roll. And would have Jameis won that game yesterday? I don't know. I don't know if the offense would have played any better with Jameis, but that can't be the situation where he wasn't 100% and you decide to play him and put him at further risk anyway. Or is the situation, like what we have the three receivers. Can we diversify the play calling? Can we get more wide receiver screens? Just get the ball in your playmakers' hands and let them do something. We don't always need to go 40 yards, out. It's great when it works. It's awesome. But let's get a little more intermediate. Let's get it more over the middle. Let's use these guys, use their strengths. So far, it's just been a very confusing offensive game planning season for the Saints. They have not scored 20 points this season. Besides the Panthers game, and that game was ugly. We were given a bunch of favorable field position from the Panthers offense. I don't know. It's not looking good, Laraib.
Yeah, Lewis, I honestly believe that Derek Carr was hurt for this game. He was not 100%. You talked about a little bit, 13, over half of his completions, Lewis, were check downs to Alvin Kamara, and he only threw the ball 37 times, Lewis. Now, in today's NFL, that's kind of on the lower half. You look at guys like Kirk Cousins, who's airing that thing out over 40 times a game. Like, I really honestly believe that he was not 100% for this one. And that's why you have a guy like Winston on your bench, one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league. So whenever your quarterback does need to miss a game, you have somebody who can come in with fresh arms and fresh legs and go out and try to win a game for you. Now you throw Derek Carr out there, who looked maybe 50% in this one and just wasn't enough, Lewis. And of course, like you mentioned, all the miscues on the defense side of the ball. Like you mentioned, this Saints secondary has the ability to be one of the top secondaries in the entire league. But whenever you're trying to, do too much and you let up some of those miscues, like you said, missed tackles, dropping balls for interceptions, that's how you lose games at home, Lewis. And so the good thing for the Saints team, Lewis, is the schedule only gets easier from here, right? Oh. Now, there was a big divisional game against the Bucs, but you talk about some of the teams you have coming up. You have to play the Chicago Bears, Lewis. You still have to play the sorry Falcons twice. Now you do have to play the Houston Texans, Lewis, which could be a big one. You have to play the New England Patriots, who looks like they don't have a starting quarterback on their roster. You still have to play the Panthers again, who also don't have a quarterback. You play the Giants, Lewis. So still a lot of opportunities left, a lot of ball games to be played for this season, Lewis. And so you're going to try to fix some of these miscues. Like you said, try to make the offense more dynamic because you have the pieces now with Alvin Kamara back. If you can get that run game going a little bit more, set up that play action. We know the Saints offense loves the deep ball. And so how can they work that in with the play action? And I still think, I know you might be all sad and gloomy about how the season has started so far. Only 20 points, more than 20 points in one game. But I still think there's a lot of time to improve. And the schedule is really favorable. And there's still playoff hope in New Orleans, Lewis.
That's my problem. That's my point. There's playoff hope. Sure. We're in a crappy division and we have an easy schedule. But my macro point here is that this team isn't good. Like, this team is just like, it's the coaching staff. It's some of the play calling. It's some of the players just effort wise, some of the lack of certain things on both sides of the ball. You're not winning a Super Bowl with this team. And you're paying a quarterback a money to where it's like, hey, we need you to come in and win for us, win big games, prove that you can, and he can't. I have no confidence in any games against the upper echelon teams, the NFC. I don't really have confidence against our divisional games anymore. Nothing's a freebie for this Saints team. There's going to be no easy game on the schedule. Those teams that you just mentioned are now looking at the Saints game as that's a game we could win. Instead of, the Saints being like, oh, that's a game we could win. There's no more of those games. Your current situation is do or death. That is the season for you now. Treat every game like it's the damn Super Bowl. There's no team on that schedule that you're better than, except for the Panthers. But that is it.
The Bears,
The Panthers. Oh, the Bears too, I guess.
the Giants.
I don't know. Because these quarterbacks who can get out of the pocket and make something happen cause so many problems. Baker Mayfield was torching us with his legs getting out of the pocket. We can't get a pass rush. It's embarrassing. Brian Brzee is our best pass rusher, and he's a rookie. I mean, Cam Jordan, Carl Ransom, he's got this huge extension. Wake up. Play better. It's embarrassing to watch. And you say the secondary, well, the secondary can't cover for that long when they have all day in the pocket and they're escaping the pocket and creating things on the run. Against the better quarterbacks, the more creative quarterbacks, this defense will get cut up and our offense won't be able to do anything to support them. That's why I'm annoyed. That's why, big picture, we may win the division. We may win a playoff game. This team is going nowhere under the current regime. There needs to be big changes.
Well, Lewis, only one team can win the Super Bowl, and 31 other teams have to not win the Super Bowl, Lewis. And so, this is why we love sports. Not every single year is going to be an awesome year. Not every single year is going to be an awful year, Lewis. But sometimes you just have to have hope in your team. Just go out there and enjoy watching your team, Lewis. Sometimes you don't have to be so
It's about the
pessimistic all the
direction
time.
too, Laraib.
I mean,
it's not necessarily.
God damn, every single Saints fan in my life, Lewis, has to find a way to hate themselves every single week watching their team play. Like, Lewis,
Passion.
my Seattle Seahawks have had some of the worst offensive line play in the last 5 years, Lewis. Our defense has given us some of the most biggest yards to some of the worst quarterbacks in the entire NFL, Lewis. But I still come out here and I still root for my team because I love my guys.
I'm rooting
no matter
for
how
them.
bad the coaching gets, no matter who we have over there at the defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, no matter how many times he's called Jamal Adams blitz boy and how he can't catch footballs or interceptions or anything like that, no matter how washed up Geno Smith was whenever he won the starting role, no matter how bad Drew Lock was whenever we traded for him in the Russell Wilson trade. I mean, I still have to love my team, Lewis. And at the end of the day, you always love for them to play well on Sunday, but sometimes they come up a little bit short. We still have to support for your team. I understand where you're coming from, where you're being passionate about yelling at these guys. Oh man, they suck, this and that. But it's football, Lewis. Someone's got to win, someone's got to lose. And so, just happy that we're football fans. So let's go ahead and move on to Thursday night football.
Wait, real quick. I want to shout out my cousin, my boy, Stuart Allen. He hooked me up with my Chris Olave jersey. I was rocking it this weekend watching the game. He had 1.4 fantasy points, so maybe we'll switch it up next week. But huge shout out. It's an awesome jersey. But yeah, go ahead.
All right. Thank you for that shout out, Lewis. Let's go ahead and move on to Thursday night football. We got a great one here. The 0-4, Chicago Bears going to Washington to play the Commanders. The Commanders -5.5, Lewis. Now, are we even watching this game in the first place? Because I'm telling you right now, I'm not.
I mean, Rainbow sounds pretty nice that night. I'll give you a direct answer. I'm gonna tune in. It's football. And, during the offseason, when there's no football for months and months, I'm sitting here like, dang, I would die to watch Commanders Bears. And then I get here and I'm like, ooh, would I die? I mean, I could do a lot more on Thursday night. Washington favored by 5.5 in this game. Or, at home, Washington's been pretty frisky all season. They're 2-2. They've had some pretty impressive performances against good teams. They came back against the Broncos. They held in there. You can criticize Ron Rivera's decision and, not going for 2 late in that game to push them over and potentially win it. But I think Ron Rivera thought in his mind, we are an equal team to this Eagles team. We ensure overtime because what bad, desperate teams do, they go for 2. Now, sometimes they get it, sometimes they win. Most of the time they don't, and they end up losing. But I think in Ron Rivera's mind, maybe it's misguided, But he says we're equals to the Eagles. We can beat them. He beat them last year without any, silly tricks. And, they ended up winning. So he says, send it to overtime. We'll see what happens there. Eagles won. So in hindsight, it's like, Ron Rivera, what are you doing? But if he thinks his team's on caliber with the Eagles, I don't think it's a bad decision. And as it pertains to this game, he doesn't think they're on caliber with the Bears. He thinks they're a lot better than the Bears. I think this defensive line is going to cause a lot of problems for Justin Fields in this game. I think he's got to dish it off a lot. Guys like Khalil Herbert expected to have a big game in this one. Cole Kmet got a little bit more involved. I liked how the Bears offense looked in that first half. Granted, against the Broncos defense, so grain of salt there. But I'm going to go with the Commanders in this game. They're just a better overall roster, better team. Really tough look for Sean Payton right here if he can't get this one, because it is the Commanders, and this was viewed as an easy win on the schedule. And falling 1-4 to the Commanders won't be good, but I'm still picking the Commanders.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Lewis. Like you mentioned, this Commanders team went tit for tat against that Eagles team on Sunday, and after a close loss, now they're coming in. They're staying at home, or excuse me, they're coming back home against a really bad Bears team. Who that was just a demoralizing loss. So it couldn't have been any worse. You talk about being up 28-7, showboating. Yeah, we're gonna get our first win of the season, and you just blow it. I mean, I don't know how that just must feel awful for a Bears fan. And now you have to face this Commanders front seven, like you mentioned, who have playmakers across the board with Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne. I think they're going to be in the backfield all night for Justin Fields, and I think that's going to be another tough one for him. So give me the Commanders 24-20.
Yeah, just go ahead and ignore all those Sean Payton comments I made. I thought I was talking about for the Broncos for a second, but no, this is definitely the Bears. And I do think this Commanders team is better than this Bears team. But hey, if you're a Bears fan, you're rooting for a loss, because you're looking at the top two picks in the draft. Caleb Williams,
1
Marvin
and 2
Harrison.
is actually insane.
I mean, you talk
So
about
we're
only one.
unranked.
You talk about only one team can win the Super Bowl. The Bears, after this season ends, and they hire Ben Johnson, they draft Marvin Harrison, they draft Caleb Williams, all of a sudden, we're cooking with gas in Chicago. That is the dream offseason. Now, they'll probably end up winning 6 games. And the end, by some miracle, they'll lose out on it. And in typical Chicago fashion, they'll draft Drake May. He'll end up being a bust. And the other guy will go on to have a Hall of Fame career. But, Laraib, that'll do it for the First and Goal podcast for this episode of our Week 4 breakdown. Anything you want to say before you head out of here?
No, just that our Thursday, be sure to be on the lookout for our predictions for Week 5. Lewis, a couple teams on by, but still gonna be a great week of football. But otherwise, besides that, I think this is the First and Goal podcast signing off.
Peace.